Hi there, my name is Stell, but you can call me Sandy. Now, I know I said, a handful of months ago that I would stop doing, commentary-related stuff, and to an extent that still is going to remain the truth. It's just I'm not going to be doing, the regular kind that I used to do, where I would just talk about any topic that just so happened to cross my dashboard. You see, what I plan to do, instead, is kind of semi-revive it, but mainly revive it so that way it's more gaming-focused, because that's kind of the direction that I want to take my channel into. Now, obviously, I don't anticipate that this is going to become a regular series or anything along those lines, so don't expect too many of these to really exist. So, consider this my way of kind of somewhat reviving commentary, while not really reviving what I used to do. So, I have about, 3 different things related to gaming stuff that's pretty much just kind of circulating around that I find to be particularly interesting, that either really piss me off or genuinely excite me and kind of put a good old smile on my face. So we're going to cover those 3 things right here and right now, kind of talk about what's going on in each of those different situations, and we'll just see where that goes from there. Roblox. It is certainly a website that exists. Now, don't get me wrong, the games on Roblox are great. I play a lot of them. Hell, I played some of them on stream. Hell, as of recording this, I just got done with a pressure stream where, unfortunately, I died right at the end of the game.
Face the wrath of my ghost-killing bullet!
What the hell?
I gotta give it to Urban Shade.
What?
Really will,
Wait, excuse you?
However, Roblox is also very well known for hosting annual events that pretty much range from either abysmal dog shit or surprisingly one of the best events that they've ever had. Case in point, the Hunt event that they had earlier this year. That is pretty much considered, at least from what I've seen, the overall consensus is that it's pretty much one of, if not the best events that Roblox has ever hosted in quite some time. But the one thing that they haven't really hosted in about half a decade, at least to my knowledge, is an actual Easter egg hunt event. They haven't had anything like that since maybe about maybe 2019, 2020 or so. I don't remember when the last one was. All I know is that it was a while ago. But they haven't had one in a while, and they decided to kind of bring that back with the Hatch. Of course, Easter is long gone at this point, but they still felt like at least reviving an egg hunt event just for old time's sake. So they decided to bring in the idea of the Hatch, and there's background noise in my fucking audio again. The Hatch was, well, just as I said, it was an Easter egg hunt event, and it was really hyped up. A lot of people were excited about it. That was until some people decided to start kind of digging into who was involved within this entire event, because, well, obviously people want to know, well, who's involved? What games are going to be part of this particular event? Because that's how a lot of these events work. It's spread across a bunch of different games, and that's how you find the different, whatever it is that the event is kind of centered around. In this case, it's the Easter eggs. And people found out that one of the prominent, creators that was going to be part of this event is someone who creates basically softcore pornography on Roblox using their engine, and actually publishes it for people to play on Roblox. Needless to say, people weren't very happy about that, which, is probably putting it very lightly. But one of the developers that was going to be part of the Hatch event is this guy right here, whose game that was going to be involved with this, at least I think it was the game that was going to be involved with the Hatch event, is this kind of supposedly, meet and interact, roleplay game with a lot of very sexually suggestive themes within it, especially within its thumbnails and its marketing for the game itself on Roblox, shall we say. So, obviously, people weren't very happy about that, and an entire trending hashtag kind of showed up on Twitter called Boycott the Hatch, which caused a bunch of the much larger creators that were going to be part of the Hatch event, games like Forsaken, I think Pressure was going to be part of it at some point. Now they're not going to be part of the event, and maybe a few other games that I've heard about but never even really played, basically all pulled out of the event after realizing this, and after realizing that Roblox wasn't going to do anything unless people started voting with, their participation and, shall we say, their wallets. And this hashtag ended up reaching the ears of investors for Roblox, which caused them to start pulling away from Roblox, because if Roblox was going to literally enlist someone who is, for all intents and purposes, showing children softcore pornography on Roblox, then obviously nobody would want to be part of that, and that's not very healthy for a brand to really want to stick their label onto. So of course, because Roblox started losing investors and participation for the Hatch, they not only started rushing the shit out of the Hatch, but they also, at least for a short time, banned that particular creator. And then they unbanned that creator, And then I think they also then banned the creator again after people found out that they unbanned the creator again. Roblox handled this about as poorly as you could possibly expect. They were really, really hoping that they could have somebody who could have possibly been a danger to children as part of a major event of theirs. And funnily enough, now that the hatch is actually out, it is currently, at least as of recording this, sitting at a 28% like ratio on Roblox's homepage as of right now, which is just unbelievably hilarious. I decided to kind of take a look at it myself to see exactly what at least the hub world looked like. Usually these kinds of events have really, out there hub worlds where you can go to all the different games and whatnot. But since they rushed the living shit out of this event, they basically decided to kind of all focus it all into just like one small little island and one boat that just takes you to a random game. Like one of the 10 games that are now involved with this event. Wow. Really great. Really making this event as memorable as possible. Alright, next up onto the docket of things that are going to irreversibly piss me off. Copyright. More specifically, really, really corrupt copyright labels that want to go out of their way to basically prevent people from making any money, and in extreme cases have even caused people to lose entire videos and channels. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the Materia Music Collective. Now, for those of you who don't know who this particular label is, well, I'll just kind of give you a little bit of a hint. They're pretty much the main label that Toby Fox has decided to use as the music publisher for all the music that's involved with all of his games, like Undertale and Deltarune. And, that would normally be fine. Usually a lot of indie developers just kind of self-publish, people like Hikita and whatnot. But some people like to try and get, their own, I guess you could say, indie, record labels, if you want to call them that. And that's kind of what Toby Fox wanted to do. Unfortunately, the contract that he decided to sign was with one of the most corrupt ones that you could possibly ever list with complaints about them going as far back as probably about a year ago. You could look up Materia, and you could probably find a fuck ton of prominent creators within the Undertale and Deltarune community basically talking about how corrupt Materia is and how unbelievably rabid they are to claim and strike down people that so much as even use 10 seconds of Toby's music. Hell, the most recent video that I released about that one news clip? Because I decided to use cat swing in the beginning and you could barely even fucking hear it, YouTube's auto detection somehow managed to pick it up, and Materia has now claimed that video and I can't make any money off of it anymore. And the thing is that this isn't just for other content creators, this isn't just for remix makers. No, this even extends to Toby Fox himself, who has allegedly had some of his own official uploads of his music on his official YouTube channel struck down by Materia. Yes, Materia themselves went over to stick a middle finger right into Toby Fox's face just because he wanted to have official uploads for archival. That is just fucking baffling to me. Now, as to why Toby hasn't already pulled out of Materia at this point is anyone's guess. My main guess is that it's probably an extremely, strict contract that he's under that for some reason he's not able to pull out of them until, maybe a year or two has passed, which is just kind of fucking dumb in my personal opinion. Contracts like that are, in my opinion, really fucking shady, and if that is the case, then, I don't know why Toby didn't, at least double check to make sure that this is, a not very corrupt music publisher, but whatever. I'm not blaming Toby Fox here. All the blame here goes on fucking Materia and their rabid fucking machine AI that they're probably using to just strike down videos that are using even the smallest hint of Toby Fox's leitmotifs in their fucking remixes. It's really dumb. It's really fucking stupid. I don't like that. I don't like Materia. Alright, finally we round off this video with some surprisingly good news for once. Although it doesn't initially start off that way. You see, there's at least a couple things I myself am pretty passionate about, okay? One of those things is actually giving a shit about video games and not bitching about them on Twitter for 18 out of my 24 hours that I have awake. And another thing that I'm very passionate about is games ownership and games preservation. Those things are really cool. Unfortunately, companies nowadays really hate that idea. They really hate the idea so much so that for the past, decade and a half or so, you haven't been able to actually properly own any video games, with a lot of their EULAs basically amounting to, if you do something that we don't like, we can strip away your ownership of it, even if you've spent $50, $60, $70 on our fucking product. And this is even extended into current day, with Nintendo going out of their way to basically make it so that way you can't even own a physical console properly anymore, with them stating that they will brick your console if you do something that they don't like, which I think from what I've heard now Nintendo is being sued for, which, if that is what they're being sued for, then I hope that Nintendo loses. Thankfully, there is in fact one movement out there that currently exists right now that thankfully is getting a ton of traction once again. That's called Stop Killing Games. What is Stop Killing Games? Well, it's basically a movement that's dedicated to putting power back into the hands of, us people who play video games. Allowing, companies to actually have to have an end-of-life plan for whenever they decide to sunset a game. So that way people don't suddenly have their access revoked to a game that they probably spent a lot of time and money on. It's just so that way people don't lose access to games that they spent a lot of time and money on. That's basically what it is. It's very simple, especially if you just read their mission statement. It's very cut and dry. It's very simple. It's very easy to understand to at least anyone with a fully functioning brain. However, there's one particular very prominent content creator that came across this particular movement about 10 months ago that not only just didn't like it, but didn't like it so much so that he decided to make it his mission to basically encourage people to not sign on to it. And that person is Thor of the ironically named PirateSoftware. You see, Thor is a former Blizzard employee, and of course, as a Blizzard employee does, he hates the idea of easily accessible games, he hates the idea of, people being able to own their games, and more than likely, also hates the idea of games preservation, because why not? I mean, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if he's also very heavily against emulation, despite pretty much every single person who likes video games under the sun is all for emulation, especially for really old games that unfortunately don't have a lot of support anymore, but can easily be played in single player. But Thor came across this in a live stream, decided to go over it, came up with insane conspiracy theories about it, somewhat conceded within that same exact live stream, stating that, oh, maybe I did get some things wrong, and then ended up, not too long after, making an edited video coming up with even more insane conspiracy theories about the Stop Killing Games movement.
Entire multiplayer server-side game into a single-player video game, which means rebalancing the entire experience around single player, rebuilding everything in the entire game. How are you going to do that with Final Fantasy XIV? You're just going to make all the raids soloable? Imagine the day that World of Warcraft shuts down, and suddenly you have to make it a single-player game for every individual that ever bought the game. That's what they're asking for.
No.
Because they would have to sunset live service games as a single-player experience. The idea that suddenly you need to make every single live service game playable single-player offline.
And ever since then, the Stop Killing Games movement has started bleeding support. Now the thing is that Thor isn't a small channel. PirateSoftware, at least on YouTube, has 2.5 million subscribers. He has 2.5 million subscribers. This is where he often goes live on, on YouTube and Twitch. And I think on Twitch he probably has about the same amount of followers over there, if not maybe slightly less. I don't really know how it works over there, and I don't feel like checking right now. Basically, a lot of people saw his weird conspiracy theories, automatically assumed that the Stop Killing Games movement wanted games publishers and whatnot to do the impossible, and they started pulling their support from it, and it's been bleeding support for the past 10 months, as I've already said, and it's been bleeding supporters. Now, as of a week and a half ago, the forerunner of the Stop Killing Games movement came out with his own video, basically announcing that the Stop Killing Games movement was nearing the end of its life cycle, and it wasn't getting enough support, and in fact has been losing support. So he decided to make one last video to try and clear up the misconceptions and misinformation that have been circulating around the internet about the movement for the past, 10 months. And this video has been picked up by a ton of people, including Charlie, who also has a ton of subscribers, and probably a few others that personally I don't really care about. But the main person, that I ended up hearing a lot of this stuff from is, of course, from Charlie, and of course from a handful of other people who are keeping close tabs on this entire situation. So he ended up picking this up, ended up boosting the voice of the Stop Killing Games movement by a metric fuck ton, and caused... basically, as of recording this right now, the Stop Killing Games movement to now surpass its goal of 1 million signatures. Now, unfortunately, the signatures only apply within Europe and whatnot, which kind of sucks. But for any of my European viewers, or for anyone that is able to put their signature onto this particular movement, I strongly urge you to do so if you are capable of doing so, because this is a very good movement, especially if you give a shit about the, longevity and the ownership of video games. If you just give a shit about games in general, then there's no reason why you shouldn't sign on to this one. It doesn't just have to be because you want games to be preserved and be able to continue to be played after, their dedicated servers have been discontinued. You should just do it just because you enjoy video games in general and you don't want any of them to just fucking die out and you to lose access to them. And thankfully they still have until the end of this month to actually, get their million signature mark. Obviously, it's already surpassed that, but who knows if some of them are like double signatures or fraudulent signatures, who really knows? But again, I strongly encourage people to go out of their way to give their support to this particular movement. Not just because, I enjoy video games and you probably enjoy video games yourself, but also just to really shove a big middle finger right up Thor of PirateSoftware. But how has Thor been responding to the backlash that he's been getting, as well as the massive amount of support that the Stop Killing Games movement has been getting? Well, I think you could take a wild guess. He hasn't responded to it very well. In fact, he's responded so poorly that he has gone on weird tirades on Twitter about it, like massive essay-length tweets we're talking about here. Has now basically blocked people on Twitter for making so much as just passive memes about him. In fact, within his weird Twitter tirades, he has doubled and tripled down on his stance that the Stop Killing Games movement is bad. On top of that, too, he has lashed out at content creators that have just decided to speak with him in private to try and get him to at least take some level of accountability for the misinformation that he has been spreading. Like, Thor himself has, leaked his conversations with Charlie in his server, which is just really scummy. But to really top off the icing, to really put the icing on this cake here, he has also muted the word Stop Killing Games on both YouTube and on his YouTube and Twitter, basically preventing people from actually talking about it whatsoever, and has even gotten bodied by a literal licensed psychiatrist on a separate live stream, where the psychiatrist basically pointed out that he has an unchecked ego.
I think sometimes the things that I talk about in regards to those types of things is misconstrued as arrogance or boasting, when in reality I'm just trying to give context.
So that is the problem right there. So I want you to listen to this phrase.
Sure.
This gets misconstrued as arrogance, but in reality it's this. Yeah. That is the most arrogant statement on the planet, bro. Like, tell me I'm wrong.
Okay. I don't see it that way, but all right.
Right? So, you don't see it that way. You're wrong.
No.
But yeah, needless to say, things aren't looking good for Thor, and rightfully so, because holy shit, what a scumbag he is. Like, I really have nothing else to say other than just, he kind of deserves what's coming to him. He kind of deserves the backlash that he's getting. He deserves to see his efforts of trying to shut down a movement that's putting power back into the hands of gamers, completely... It's funny to watch this. It's funny to just watch the ultimate, shooting thyself in the foot, if you will, of PirateSoftware here. I think it's just really funny. But, basically, once again, I just want to, emphasize that if you do live in Europe, or if you're able to give your signature to the movement, I strongly urge you to do so. I'll probably leave a link to the website down below so that way you can give your signature. Let's move on to the end. But anyways, that's basically it for this little, what's new in gaming, shall we say. I don't know what I'm gonna call this video. But, if you guys enjoyed today's video, please consider leaving a like. That's very well appreciated. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to. I'll leave my socials linked down below. My Blue Sky and whatnot, and of course my official server if you feel like joining it. Don't expect videos like this to be too common, because I still want to mainly just focus on, talking about and playing video games. And that's still going to be the majority content on here from here on out. this may be like an infrequent thing whenever things particularly pique my interest in the realm of gaming and like gaming news and whatnot. But yeah. Anyways, this has been Stel, and I'll see you guys whenever I see ya.